I have a student who's currently incarcerated in Florida, Lesmes Caseres. I think I'm saying it right. He's he's a New Yorican. Am I saying it right? A Puerto Rican who lives in New York. Okay, who lived in New York. And I just want to tell a really interesting story. So, in the process of this course, I was asked for a cover letter because I want to kind of chat with them. I want to talk writer to writer so that they can share their concerns about writing in a less formal kind of a way. Well, it turns out that this guy, Lesmes Caseres, is in a writers group in Florida, and he mentioned the name of the woman who is in charge of the writing group, and my jaw just fell on the ground because I know this woman, but I've been out of contact with her. She was in my cohort at grad school, and so isn't that a small world kind of thing? So through this prisoner taking this course, she and I are now connected again. So amazing. Anyway. There are three pieces. I've excerpted them. This one is called The Kinship of Suffering. If I'm found guilty, I face at least 25 years in prison. The jurors return from their deliberation and the entire courtroom rises. Juror Scott shields her face to avoid looking in my direction. She's sobbing, and her sobs foreshadow my mother's tears that will soon follow. Tears will drown the courtroom, and I will sink to my demise. Before the foreman utters a single word, I feel the floor crack beneath my feet. I brace for the fall. The foreman reads the jury's verdict as if he's checking items off of a grocery list. Did Lesmes Caseres actually possess a firearm? Yes. Did Lesmes Caseres actually discharge a firearm? Yes. Did Lesmes Caseres actually cause great bodily harm to the victim? Yes. The jury finds me guilty as charged. The judge's gavel claps and the floor cracks open, sending me into a dark abyss. I float in the guilt of confusion that surrounds me. I don't blink, I don't speak, I don't breathe, I can't. The voices outside my pool of agony are muffled and ultimately silenced as I sink into a hole with no bottom. Despair fills my lungs. I feel myself dying more than a civic death. I'm sure my heart will stop. Satan and his shifty soldiers surround me. My fingertips are covered in ink as black as ashes. My prints are pressed upon a death certificate, black robes, black suits. My lawyer whispers in my ear, but he sounds like a robot running on a dying battery. We're going to appeal this. I turn to see my mom mouthing the words, "I love you, son," but I'm sinking and my hands shackled. I can't reach for her. My descent into hell is blackness and blurs. A nurse with a questionnaire wakes me from my unconscious stupor. The only sounds I can muster are zombie grunts, muffled by a deluge of tears and mucus falling from my face. I can't make out her questions through the deafening dread of my wailing soul. "Excuse me, Mr. Caseres, I'm speaking to you. Can you hear me? I need you to answer a few questions, okay? Have you ever thought of committing suicide?" Is she suggesting that I commit suicide? Does she not see that I'm already dead? Her empty questions continue. When was the last time you thought about suicide? I try to focus my molten eyes on the nurse, sitting in her smug scrubs, and with a twist of both sarcasm and truth, I grumble, "About 5 minutes ago." The authorities toss me into a suicide cell for my own safety. The refrigerated tomb has none of the comforts I can kill myself with. No mattress, no blankets, no sheets, no pillow, and no pillowcase. At the front of the cell are wide windows to observe the oddball inside. The producers of this freak show provide me with a fresh paper gown from the wardrobe department for the mentally ill. An Arctic chill reaches my bones. It's too cold to kill myself. Blood bond saved me from surrendering in my suicide cell. That idea that my mom, dad, and daughter might inherit my suffering halted my fall to the bottom. As much as I tried to resist the notion, I am not alone in this cell. Okay, the next one's called Compounds. Again, these are excerpts. Newport sold for about $5 in the prison canteen. My hair was still damp with freedom, so I wasn't ready to trade in my filtered cigarettes for the cheaper tobacco pouches that had to be hand-rolled. In retrospect, I realized I must have looked like a rich kid strolling the recreation yard, blowing $5 clouds of smoke into the air and leaving signals for the predators to follow. At 25 years old, I didn't see color or race. I grew up with friends who covered just about every shade of the color spectrum, but colors don't mix on the prison palette. Whites talked with whites, blacks bawled with blacks, Spanish smoked with Spanish. As a new Eurekain with very little Spanish speaking skills, I wasn't sure in which scene I belonged. Therefore, I chose to walk alone. When I offered a black guy the short end of a Newport, I had no idea I had mistakenly mixed the wrong colors together. A few tokes from a Newport purchased a workout partner. We lifted weights, we ran, we did calisthenics. He would spot me as we did shoulder presses, and my hopeless arms struggled to keep 25 years lifted above my head. When we weren't getting ripped, we were getting wrecked. My new friend found a connection for my favorite poison besides Newports, marijuana. Though I no longer indulge, I must admit I miss the days when I could smoke the pain away. The pain of irretrievable time never really goes anywhere. It resonates. Look into any convict's eyes and you'll see the glossy redness of years incinerated. I was rarely suspicious of others before my imprisonment. However, my experience has taught me to doubt first. I believe doubt is a defense against devils that prey on the meek. This may be the worst form of institutionalization, but it has ensured my survival for 15 years. It's with great gloom that I admit to being recast into a distant skeptic. I always hoped I could change prison and not be changed. Instead, my feelings fight with my intellect. I hesitate when I should dive. I question love when I know love is the answer. A scar above my left eye reminds me of when I should have doubted first. Anxiety reminds me that doubt doesn't fit naturally with who I am. The colors don't mix. And this last one, this is called Faith with No Legs, and one of the assignments I give several full-length memoirs that they're to read and analyze and comment, and then I give them several excerpts. One of them is a book that's back on the table by a Turkish man named Murat Kurnaz, the book's title is 5 Years of My Life, An Innocent Man in Guantanamo. Of course, everyone's heard of Guantanamo. It's a deeply chilling and disturbing memoir, and you'll see reference to it in this piece. Again, Lesmes Caseres. This is called Faith with No Legs. I could tell he was mentally handicapped by the way he spoke and by the way he was easily led astray by the quick-witted. I can't remember his name, but I remember the neon sign hanging over his head that flashed the word victim. The predators also noticed, and they paid special attention to the money receipts that came like clockwork during mail call. It wasn't long before the welcoming committee invited him to a friendly game of poker. For a new arrival, especially one with a mental disability, it must have felt like being invited into the sandbox to play with the cool kids. What he saw as social acceptance, the dirty dealers saw as buried treasure. Prison is filled with these types of lowlifes from the low rungs of our social ladder who deal from the bottom of the deck. Nice guys get lost in the shuffle. I shook my head in disgust as I watched the cons split the spoils. In their poker games, only one player played fair, and unfortunately for him, he was playing with a bum hand dealt to him from birth. Grateful to at least be in the game, he paid his debts, handing over hundreds of dollars worth of coffee, chips, cookies, soup, soda. The canteen booty was likely paid for by a loved one who was worried sick about their son or brother, whom the odds were stacked against. I doubt his family knew their cash was going to Smitty or little Mama, the dorm sissy. In prison, new arrivals wear their newness like a tourist in a foreign land. The natives observe their lost look and how the foreigner copies their motions, trying to adjust to the cultural norms. Like lions, preying on the weakest wildebeest in the herd, they stalk their prey, prepared to pounce. This is the world I live in. A world where your mentally impaired child is taken for all your hard-earned money in a rigged game of poker. A world where your grandfather's bag of canteen is mercilessly snatched from his hands. A world where the weak are shook down and the strong do nothing but watch and shake their heads in disapproval. I'm not excluded. Spend enough time on these corrupted plains, and the sight of felines with bloodied fangs feasting on a carcass becomes as common as breakfast at Denny's. My own numbness sickens me. It sticks to my clothes like cigarette smoke. Prison staff isn't immune to become fodder for the felines. As far as parts of the prison population are concerned, all women are hoes and all police officers are crackers. It doesn't matter the nobility of a woman's character or the color of the police officer's skin. A woman could sacrifice and toil over textbooks for years in order to earn her master's degree. She could decide to do something as meaningful as effect change in a prison setting, perhaps become a teacher, and she's still considered a hoe. An officer could be as fair, professional, and racially unbiased as possible, and he's still considered a cracker. Because of all the aforementioned observations, I have little sympathy for convicts. I'm indifferent to their pain. Misery pushes me to the margins of misanthropy. I picked Murat Kurnaz's piece because I was initially moved by the calm and compassionate character Abdul Rahman. But as I reflected on what I read, I realized there was no mention of why Abdul was being held in Guantanamo. I found myself wondering if he deserved his cruel treatment. I thought about the animals I see who are afforded humane treatment, and I admit that I sometimes wish they would get their just deserts. I would not cry if an immediate reaction force came to haul them off, like in Guantanamo. However, I know that my apathy is at odds with my beliefs. My faith tells me to love, and this makes me a hypocrite. I believe in love, but I don't live it. Like Abdul, my faith has no legs. Prison walls mold our mental clay in different ways. While I have seen the blackest of evils, I have also seen the suffering that produces such evil. A prison sentence can become the most enlightening of empirical studies on nature versus nurture. A conversation with most convicts will usually reveal a history of neglect and abuse. While some manage to separate themselves from their suffering, it cannot be disputed that others become steeped in it. Not that negative life experiences are an excuse to victimize anyone, but everything seems to produce in its own likeness a daisy is incapable of producing a rose. Knowing that crime can come from congruent causes, I, like society, struggle with prison as punishment versus compassion for convicted criminals. I ask myself, if Abdul did something horrible, wouldn't lack of compassion for his condition be just as horrible? Where does the abuse end and the exemplification of love begin? I accept that it begins with me. I need to change.